Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. Great article here from Verizon's News Center. I'll leave a link to it in the description so you guys can check it out. So, Verizon's broadband strategy, in my opinion, and the numbers show it clear as day, is going to be the company's biggest momentum, positive momentum for several years to come. So they essentially doubled their FWA customer count from 4 to 5 to 8 to 9 million. And if they can get Frontier across the finish line, which is still up in the air, right? We've heard some negative news on that recently. If they can get that across the finish line, they plan to bring fiber to premise 35 to 40 million homes. And you add FWA into that, they want to touch 100 million homes with some type of broadband. If it's FWA, it's FWA. If it's fiber to the premise, it's fiber to the premise. That's a huge positive for Verizon, and I think it will be their biggest growth, positive momentum for the next several years. I think wireless will still play a part. I mean, they clearly grow on business every year, every quarter. They're starting to turn the corner on the consumer side, but we need to see that in consecutive quarters to really make a opinion about it. And again, like I say in other videos, I know T-Mobile and AT&T do not report the numbers like that. Verizon does. If they didn't report those groups separately, then we would just say, well, Verizon added 239,000 customers. But they report their strengths and their weaknesses. Their strength is business. Their weakness is consumer. And their big positive momentum, which will, I think, turn into their strength, is going to be home broadband. They're going to be very well known to grow home broadband every quarter. 350, 400,000. If they plan to accelerate, if they choose to accelerate, 450, maybe 500,000 a quarter is possible. C-band is scaling. They're at 270 now. They're now going to 300 million pops plus. They're bringing millimeter wave to multi-dwelling units. That's a huge offloading to the network, one. And two, that will allow them to aggressively target more units that were not in the plans, right? Maybe they were targeting the units with C-band deployments, but they have a cutoff. I think it's like 33 customers per sector or something like that. I think that's what it is internally. So there's a cutoff. But if you direct millimeter wave point to point to a multi-dwelling unit, you can possibly compete for every single person in the unit, where previously you had limitations. So that's what millimeter wave brings to the table. So that's why we saw recently an article come out that T-Mobile is testing millimeter wave on FWA because the point-to-point, it just works. It's so much capacity. In some of the nodes today, where Verizon has millimeter wave commercially already deployed, once you add 4x4 MIMO, 256 QAM, you do SA, you aggregate the SA C-band channel with N260 or whatever's deployed in that area. I mean, you're doing over 5 gigs of speed. You don't need that speed for mobile connections. You need to monetize that ASAP. You need to monetize any nearby business, point-to-point, FWA, whatever you need to do, you need to monetize that. You need to make a return on investment on all that capacity because, one, you're running high fiber circuits to it. You spent money deploying it. I mean, there's just a ton of capacity unused at this point in time that needs to be monetized. They need to make use of it. Autonomous vehicles are starting to sign up with Verizon, the companies, but FWA point-to-point is going to be a big deal for Verizon. They're going to bring that to businesses across America. They're going to bring that to multi-dwelling units next year. They made that very clear at the conference. And at that type of capacity, millimeter wave presents, anything that wants a connection can connect, in my opinion. There is a ton of capacity on millimeter wave, and they can further increase 10 gig, potentially in the future. Who knows, right? But millimeter wave is really the go-to for point to point. I still, is it a mobile connection? Yeah. If your user equipment is close to the node and there's several nodes deployed all over, then yes, you're going to have a pleasant experience. But for the carriers to build that extensive density and all those baseband units that are going to have to be deployed, that's probably really not feasible from a capital allocation perspective, right? And then also you got to look at it from an operations perspective too. If you have to deploy that many nodes all over, right? Is it really feasible from an OpEx perspective? Likely not, right? But that's not saying that they're going to stop deploying. They're still deploying, but they're targeting specific areas, right? Pockets. And that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing that those pockets likely needed. And then, you should start setting aside capital allocation, which I think Verizon is already doing, for millimeter wave point to point. I think they are going to deploy specific nodes in neighborhoods to do point to point FWA. They're doing it with multi-dwelling units, but I think they're going to bring that strategy across all neighborhoods where they are able to deploy it. Keep that in mind. They have to be able and get permits approved to deploy in neighborhoods, and they got to get municipalities, counties on board with that. But once they get clearance, they deploy those nodes. Trust me, man, millimeter wave point to point, FWA, small business, big business, whatever, it's going to be the biggest momentum driver for Verizon in the future is going to be home broadband overall. They're going to grow the Fios footprint, then they're going to add Frontier, and then they're going to do FWA. That's going to be their biggest thing. 400,000 or 500,000 customers per quarter on a consistent basis with very low churn, might I add. I think it's going to present very low churn for them, and I think they will be able to retain most of their customers on these products because they're literally building it with capital allocation. Like I said before, T-Mobile is sticking to the access capacity or the excess capacity model, like they keep saying. But now we're starting to see them test millimeter wave. They want to go to 12 million. They're going to need some offloading. They're going to need something. They have no offloading whatsoever. Everything is still handled on the same tower that you're handing off from. If you're going home and you connect to your home sector on the mobile side, you go in your house, you connect, you hand off to the router, you're still on the same sector. So there is absolutely no offloading for the T-Mobile network as it stands. There's some wireline that's coming in play with Metronet and Lumos and some of the other partners, but they really need to get this going. And Verizon is ahead of the curve, right? They have offloading. Millimeter wave is offloading, right? Yes, you're still going to connect to millimeter wave nodes on the mobile side, but it just doesn't have that range. So eventually you drop off of that once you leave your home area, and then you connect to the macro. So when you're going home and you have millimeter wave in your neighborhood, you're going to hand off from the macro to the millimeter wave node, and that's offloading, right? T-Mobile is going to do that as well. I'm going to say it now in this video. I know they're still testing through May 2025, but trust me, they're going to do point-to-point millimeter wave for FWA. They're going to do it. They're going to have to. Usage is increasing, what they say, 10% every year. They're doing 0.5 terabyte now in usage, so they're going to have to do it. But good to see from Verizon. This is their biggest momentum driver. I do think eventually they will fight back on the consumer growth, and it will gradually come. But the biggest driver for the company and momentum positive is going to be broadband. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe if you're new. Follow my social media outlets. This is Tyrone with Tech Life. See y'all in the next one. Peace.